stopping your opponent from playing their turn 4 or turn 5 in of itself could be game winning. Hello Snugglebugs, welcome to today's Hearthstone video. We're going to be continuing our Maw and Order Castle Nathria mini set review. We're going to just hop right into it here with the first new card revealed that I saw today, which is a 2-mana secret called Perjury for Rogue that allows it so you play the secret, and then when your next turn starts, you discover a new secret from a different class. So it's kind of a weird make your opponent play around it, not knowing what it is, when it turns out it's really just a stall to get a different secret, which is a discovery, of course, which could be pretty powerful. And then because it's a discovery of a different class card, it'll make it so your opponent, again, won't know how to play around it. Overall, I, again, don't think Secret Rogue, especially, is super powerful. So because no one's playing the other Rogue secrets right now, everyone will likely, if you did play this today, think it's Perjury and no, not to have to worry about playing around it. So because of that's where the meta currently is today, I don't really see Perjury seeing play. Maybe this will be something that makes you want to try Secret Rogue again. I don't know if this is strong enough to make that work, but it could be neat because, of course, you can guarantee that your opponent can't proc it with your Halkias on the board, and it automatically will go off and give a random secret, making them not feel super safe about killing your Halkias. So maybe we'll see. Overall, again, I think this card will depend on the meta, and I don't think it's going to be that great. Next up here, we have the Scribbling Stenographer. It is a 6-mana 4/4 with Rush, but costs 1 less for each card you've played this turn. I've already seen some people on Twitter referring to this as, the way that Wild Paul Null should be in the sense where it, doesn't just discount from your deck, etc. I honestly do agree that this card will probably be a lot more fair. You won't necessarily be able to always play it out on turn 2 or 3 like you usually can with Null. At the same time, I also still feel like this will be a very powerful card. Let's say, honestly, this is probably would be considered a very powerful card at 3 mana, and it's not that difficult for Rogue to play 3 single cards in a turn. You play this in like Miracle Rogue with Edwin, and not only do you play a lot of cards in one turn, but as you're drawing and cycling, this would become like a 0-mana draw that you play, as long as, of course, it was after at least a couple of cards, which is very powerful, which also gives you room to control the board with the Rush. So because of all of those things, I think in even the current Rogue decks as is, this card is going to be very powerful. Next up, we have 3 new Warlock cards, starting first with a 2-mana fire spell called Arson Accusation, which is choose a minion, destroy it after your hero takes damage. So similar to the Rogue spell that we saw in yesterday's review video. The 2 mana, you sort of accuse the minion, and then after the effect takes place, that minion dies. And of course, in Warlock, having your own hero take damage to kill the minion is super easy. I focus on standard play, but even as simple as if you have 4 mana and you use 2 to target a minion with this, and then you life tap. You basically get your 2 mana draw card, destroy a minion for an additional 2 mana. There's also many other ways. If you use this in, say, a deck that plays Flame Imp, of course you have a 1 mana 3/2 that hurts yourself, but then of course that turns this into a 2 mana destroy a minion. So it's pretty versatile. Warlock has a lot of ways to activate themselves. Absolute worst case scenario, like let's picture your opponent maybe somehow gets out a Wild Paul Null on 2, so you only have the 2 mana to play this. You play this on their Wild Paul Null. If they decided to hit your face the next turn with it, if they can't evolve it, then it'll kill itself. So it's kind of a nice little 2 mana situational type thing. It sort of puts the minion on the clock, especially again with life tap. So I think this deck will see a ton of play. I'm excited for what I would consider this to be a cheap control tool, which is really nice. And yeah, that's the first card. Let's go check out the next one. Next up here, we have an Imposter. It's a 2-mana 1/1 demon, notably so, to start with. However, its battle cry is choose a friendly imp and then transform into it. So it becomes an actual copy of that imp. I actually think, obviously, if you played this without any imps on the board, 2-mana 1/1, terrible, wouldn't play it. But again, even if you think of like Flame Imp, you play the Flame Imp down on turn 1, you play this on turn 2, 2-mana 3/2, not bad, especially in an imp deck when you have things like your Vile Library, Impending Catastrophes, and things like that. But also, since it turns into a full copy of it, if you've already got like your Mischievous Imps out with a Vile Library and you got one pumped up to be, say, like a 6/6, 7/7, or 8/8, this all of a sudden becomes a 2-mana 8/8 that then also counts as an imp for future activations of those spells in that location. I think this is going to be a very powerful, and maybe that's reaching too far, but I'm going to say this is going to be a very powerful addition to an imp Warlock deck for 2 mana. There's not going to be as many situations in an aggressive style deck that you won't have an imp to copy. So for that reason, I do think this will see a ton of play. Last but not least, for the Warlock, I believe there's only 3 cards per class, so this is the last one we'll see for this mini set. The Habeas Corpses, which is great. I think it's just a great play on words there. It's a 3-mana spell that discovers a friendly minion to resurrect, give it rush, and then it dies at the end of the turn. I mean, overall, if you have any decent-sized minions, 3 mana to summon something with rush to trade in, probably pretty good, right? But the thing is if you also play this in a type of deck that either has death rattles, or since it dies, I believe that would feed infuses and that kind of thing, you could also treat this as like a 3 mana activate a death rattle on top of possibly getting trade on the board. So I think this may not be like, it may not fit perfectly well in decks that exist today, but this will allow, I think, for maybe some different fluidity in Warlock decks to come. If you enjoy the content here on the channel, I'd appreciate a like, comment, and a subscribe. It really does help us out here. Let me know in the comments down below, if there's anything else you'd like to see with these card reviews. I know other creators do like a star rating system. I've currently sort of stayed away from that, but again, if that's something that maybe we should do, so that way we can come back, say, in a month's time or a couple weeks time and see how well we did with the ratings, that could be fun. Let me know, and yeah, keep that in mind for future sets. Which is a 1-mana a shadow spell that is choose a minion destroyed after you play a card copied from the opponent. So it goes along with all the theft stuff we've been seeing lately. So, if you copy something with identity theft and then they have a minion later that you want to kill, you target it with this with 1 mana. It's a shadow spell. You play the card that you stole from them, so you get the value of stealing it still and getting it played, and then you also kill something on your opponent's side of the board. Now, I think this is really strong. Obviously, this is a lot more situational than, say, the Arson Accusation that we saw earlier for the Warlock, because you have to have already stolen a card from your opponent. There's a card we'll be getting into that maybe will help you out there. However, I think this is going to be a really fun and interesting card for me. I love control like Thief, Priest, Shadow as well, so the fact that it's a shadow spell goes a long way in my book. I hope this card sees a lot of play, and for 1 mana, technically remove a minion. I think it just will. And the minion I'm speaking of is the Incriminating Psychic, which is a 4-mana 2/6 with Taunt, Death Rattle, copy a random card from your opponent's hand. It doesn't say an add it to your hand, but usually that's what these effects do, so I could be wrong. However, this is the card, one of the cards I was talking about, where it's now a 4-mana 2/6 taunt that effectively takes a card from your opponent. So then later, if you can play that either with the Harvester legendary or without it, the 1-mana Theft Accusation will help you take out a minion, possibly a huge threat from the opponent, and I think that's going to go a long way. Adding more stuff to the Thief package, I am all for it, and I'm excited for this card to come out. The last priest card for the mini set, I believe, is called Clear Conscience, which is a 3-mana holy spell. Give a friendly minion +2/+3, and only you can target it with spells and hero powers. I actually think this is going to be crazy strong in sort of that Naga buff priest deck, where, maybe right now, obviously you have the Bless or whatever to make it really big, but this could be a good little intermediary step where you buff it with a bunch of stuff, then you give it Clear Conscience, and then your opponent either has to only trade into it with minions or board clear spells, not individual removal spells, which is sometimes how those things get dealt with. So I do think that this is going to be a really strong card and played specifically in that deck, or at least some form of Pelagos buff deck. And now we have the Demon Hunter Legendary that got announced, called Prosecutor Meltranix. I apologize if I pronounced that incorrectly. It is a 4-mana 2/6 demon with the battle cry. Your opponent can only play their left and rightmost cards on their next turn. So it's pretty disruptive. Of course, depending on what deck you're playing against, that means basically the card they draw or the card they've been holding on to the longest, which on turn 4, a lot of decks, if they held on to a card way over here, what would be on their left-hand side, usually cost more than 4 because they're holding on to it for a reason. So it kind of puts them almost in this weird situation where if they don't top deck something they can play, they almost have to skip their turn. In those exact scenarios, this card could be very powerful if played on 4 and stops them pretty much from playing anything during their turn. Demon Hunter, whether it's the aggressive side or, Relic Hunter, Relic Vault, the Relic Vault style Demon Hunter, this stopping them for a whole turn can really set you up for those aggressive pushes. So on a bad turn, you use this and it just sort of forces them to play cards they may not have wanted to play on the end of their hand. And then in a really good play of this card, it could stop them from their whole turn. So when I first saw this, I actually thought, oh, that's, not great. Okani, in my opinion, would be better. But when you really think about how one turn in Hearthstone nowadays, especially, can mean a win or a loss depending on what cards get played. Stopping your opponent from playing their turn 4 or turn 5 in of itself could be game winning, and a 4 mana 2/6 isn't bad enough like of a drawback to make that not worth I think trying in a lot of decks. Especially my last point on that will be Demon Hunter, at least from my experience, they have a lot of good 2, 3, and like say 5 mana plays and things like that, but not the most 4 mana plays. A lot of times it gets filled with hero power and a 3 mana card and things like that. So this just filling in that slot also could be really important. So for those reasons, I think this card is going to be played quite a bit in Demon Hunter. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed these card reviews. Thank you very much for watching. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one.